everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their sun or rising sign in Scorpio. Some people will also say the moon, if that's something that you resonate with. But I usually just, because I'm thinking of myself, I usually don't bother with that. But if you're interested in that, then you can obviously do that as well. And this is a general forecast because your degree of sun or rising matters for the timing issues, but it's okay. General forecasts can still give you an idea, and some of the transits will be in alignment with what you're dealing with right now. What are you dealing with, Scorpio? Well, we're starting the month with the sun in a fellow water sign, so that's very nice. That's very nice. It's called a trine. And the trine is the easiest flow of manifestation. So your sun to the transiting sun to your sun is very nice kind of a feeling, because first of all, it's going to have like a similar type of a vibe to it. And in water, it's all about our feelings. For you, your fifth house is where this action is. That's what Pisces is for you, is the fifth house. Well, what is the fifth house? The fifth house is creativity, love. Love is a big one for the fifth house, but creativity, creative self-expression. It's a house of pleasure, the house of fun, house of conceiving children. It's the house of recreational sex. I mean, if I could be the designer of the houses, your eighth house that you rule is spiritual sex, magical sex. So why not have that be conceiving children? Why have it be the recreational sex? Maybe that's because most people are doing that when they conceive. I don't know. But anyway, it's the house of the business that you own. And in terms of fun, I mean, the sun rules this house, and you're going to have the sun in that house. So the sun is going to be in its own house. So it's like kind of like being in a Leo or something and just being a big kid at heart. This was the house where the Mercury retrograde began on February 16th. So Mercury is actually going back into your fourth house on the 4th. So if you're listening in February or in early March, Mercury is going to be in that fifth house as well as the sun, and then go back into the fourth house. Now, because Mercury began in the fifth house, and just in general for everybody, Mercury retrograde could bring back somebody from your past. And with the fifth house energy, it could be like a former love interest. But the question is this somebody that you want back into your life? Or, I was just reading recently, and they were saying that the fifth house is just, maybe the person's attitude towards love in general. So even if you're coupled or if you're like separated from somebody, the fifth house is still in play because it can inform your feelings about this particular issue. And your feelings may be along the lines of, do I really want to have a child with this individual? Do I really, if you're currently coupled, or if you do hear back from somebody that's in your past, boy, do I really want to have much to do with this? Is this person really good for me? And if you already have, let's say you have children, can this person really fit into our household? And you might be concerned about it because of past issues that you had with them. And so there's something that you're rethinking that has a domestic angle as well. So, I mean, it could even be in terms of starting your own business. Hey, I can do this at home. I don't have to rent office space. So it's just kind of like the wheels turning in your head, trying to, kind of figure out how you're going to do everything, the logistics of it. But there might be like an angle that has to do with having children. Do I want to now? What is this going to mean just even for your real estate? Because the fourth house can be real estate. Is your house big enough to accommodate a child? So these kinds of issues are the Mercury retrograde goes back into this domestic area, and also just in and of itself can deal with issues surrounding, this could be, I was going to say the mother, but I'm thinking even with the fifth house that this could be about your childhood and coming to terms with something, or, just kind of like when Mercury retrogrades, we might, an old memory may kind of resurface, and we're like, oh my God, this has a direct result. This is why this is happening. It's because of that. And then talking about your childhood. And there's something else I was going to say about that, and I can't remember. What I was going to say is that a couple of years ago, and this was going back probably to about 2016 or so, I'm not exactly sure, when there were eclipses in Leo and Aquarius, and so the fourth house was part of this, and that might have, and you had the South Node transiting the fourth house. So you may have already had this kind of, prelude, if you will, to kind of dealing with the past. And you're going to have a little bit more of that. I'll get to that in a minute, but just kind of like these ideas coming up for you. And so then on the 9th, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. On the same day that Mercury goes back into your fourth house on the 4th, Venus goes into Taurus, the sign that it rules. So this is great for all of us for money. And this is in your committed partnership sector. So that's wonderful as well, because that can be very harmonizing for relationships. On the 9th, Mercury goes direct at 28 degrees of Aquarius in that fourth house. So resolutions that have a domestic feel to them as well. On the same day, there's a full moon at 19 degrees of Virgo in your 11th house of hopes and wishes. So that can bring something also to fruition that may be a long-range goal of yours, or in some cases, you may form an awareness of a goal that you'd like to have. On the 16th, Mercury goes back into Pisces, where it began the retrograde in the fifth house. So, given the fact that you still have the sun in this house, this may be somebody that you are talking to. So I wouldn't even be surprised if there was, like if you had some kind of a marital situation occur. You may have made up with your partner, because Venus can be like kind of peacemaking or things like that. But the thing that's interesting about it is that Uranus is in this sector. So now in the 7th house for you. I believe that even if you have made peace with your partner, or if there was no conflict to begin with, that you're going to have to become a lot more open-ended with your primary relationship, because Uranus is going to demand a lot of freedom. And Scorpio is a sign that tends to kind of like to keep people very close to them, to say the least. And this may be kind of a new concept, but it's a way to stretch your wings and become more confident in your relationships. Because even though Scorpios give the impression of being very confident, and I think that you are a very strong sign overall, I think that there's like a vulnerability lurking somewhere inside of Scorpio, which makes them, very can be very controlling, especially with their significant other. And that's where the infamous Scorpio suspiciousness is suspicious. Is that a word? The suspiciousness comes into, or suspicion comes into play, and things like that. So you're somebody that needs to loosen up, to have faith that you can have a relationship where you don't have to keep tabs on everybody all the time, or on the other person all the time, and that all is well, because Uranus is going to perhaps throw some curveballs in your relationship. But they can be really cool curveballs where you are forced by some incident or circumstance to let go of the need to because it's like a fear-based need to have that partner not abandon you or something like that, because Uranus is very freewheeling. And you may even meet, you might even meet a partner who happens to be an Aquarian, the sign ruled by Uranus, that is like a permanent partner during the next 7 years, or whenever Uranus is going to stay there, until something along those lines. So that's nice. Your Venus into Taurus. Then we have, I think I had to pause this, so I'm like, okay, I'm talking about these things, but probably I've gone a lot further into this than I thought I did. Yeah, because I already talked about Mercury going back into Pisces. Now, and by the way, when Mercury goes back into Pisces, you'll be able to speak on your love, your attitudes towards love in a very direct, forward moving way. Perhaps you were kind of inside of yourself and thinking about them, and now if you need to share that with your partner, you're able to, and you can articulate it probably a lot better than you have before. On the 19th, the sun goes into Aries, so it's the astrological new year. For you, this is the 6th house every year, and when the sun goes into Aries, Aries is your 6th house, Scorpio, so it's a very down to brass tacks type of energy, and you may feel more organized, like you want to get everything together. This is the house of health and your work. So if you're in between jobs, we're going to have a new moon here. I'll talk about that in a second. So there might be some good opportunities to find work. There's also, this is also the house of daily routines. So if you are one of those people that I was talking about earlier that may be getting everything together because you've started a business, this is also a crucial piece of the puzzle. And I'm still working on it on my end, because it's about how do you organize your day when you work for yourself. It's easy to fall into line when you have somebody, kind of like observing you, telling you what to do and things like that. And, oh, he or she came in late. Oh, okay. And kind of like keeping tabs on your behavior. When you work for yourself, you don't have kind of any of these, this oversight. So you have to be that person for yourself. And depending how disciplined a person is inherently, that's going to determine whether or not they're able to do this. And in some cases, it can be a situation where the person has a hard time regulating themselves. And it's like, for instance, with me, I'm very spontaneous. So I kind of, having to force myself to do something does not come naturally to me, or natural. Does come. I don't know why I'm having these grammatical situations going on here. It does not come natural to me, but for you, it might. You're a fixed sign. You may like a schedule. But you still may have to tweak it, because perhaps you were working 9 to 5 and now you're in the position of having totally different hours. And even if you're working for somebody else, if you're working from home, that may kind of create that sort of need for a shift. And also, if you are, maybe you're working part-time from home, like you're doing telecommuting, is that what they call it? But, again, if you're like raising a child or something, you may be still connected to your company, but you're working from home, at least for the time being. So there's like having to tweak that schedule. So, on the 21st, Saturn goes into Aquarius. If you're interested in, a lot more elaborate kind of possibilities, please check out on my channel. I have a, what do you call those things? A playlist, and it will have the video for your sign, Scorpio, Sun, or Rising, and, for the Saturn and Aquarius transit, and you can get more detailed information. Basically, this is going to be in your fourth house of home and family. And so Saturn can bring duty. Saturn can bring structure. As far as duty, it can be that you have more responsibility as it connects to home. The fourth house can be the mother, so perhaps you have to take care of the mother. And this could be something, maybe somebody buying a home, their first home, and it's a new responsibility for them, because not only do they have to pay a mortgage, but they also have to take care of the home itself and all of the potential things that can go wrong. It can also be a situation of, looking, on the emotional level. This is a water house, so on the emotional level, going back, delving into childhood, issues, and really trying to get some clarity. Well, it's not just clarity though, but kind of like coming to terms with these things so that you can move forward. And so at certain times of life, this particular transit may really speak more to people on that level. Like, for instance, even middle age can be a time when people finally start to think about the past. But during the first Saturn return, if you're having a Saturn return, if you're around the age of 30 and your natal Saturn is in Aquarius and it's hitting your fourth house, this can really tie you with your upbringing and give you insight, force you to work on these issues in order to gain insight and therefore be able to transcend anything that occurred that was not pleasant, has kept you down. And that's one of the reasons why I was speaking about that at certain times in life, this can be particularly, this particular transit in this particular house may be quite, I was going to say quite important, but even hits home even more so, pardon the pun, because this is the home sector. Like even your second Saturn return, because especially if you feel like you're in your late 50s, around 60, and you're looking at your life as there being more of a past than a future, this is a time, even informally, that people are assessing, their progress in life, what they've accomplished, their accomplishments. And if a person feels like they're not accomplished, it can be very painful just in and of itself to have that second Saturn return, because the person may feel that they failed. And then if you add in this, it might give the person a strong desire to master this. And so they may go into therapy. They may, try to heal from things. But there may be this thought in the back of their mind, why didn't I do this 30 years ago? Why did I wait until now? Well, the problem is that we don't always connect the dots, see the reason to do something until we are much older. And I think a lot of that has to do with if people are raising children, that distracts them, and they can kind of get lost in all of their activities. If they're ambitious in a job and maybe it's a job that didn't actually pay off for them, but they still have that fight in them. They still want to do something, leave a mark on the world. And they're trying in this and that, kind of dabbling around and seeing what will stick. And by the second Saturn return, people kind of become very sober about how life works. And especially if they're living a very worldly type of existence where they believe that, oh yes, I'm 60, my best days are behind me. I can only expect to get menial, jobs. I can't expect to actually have a second career that's a legitimate career. It's going to be more like a job. They're going to think in those terms because they're thinking in that matrix way. So it all depends on the state of consciousness, the time of life, how this will affect you. But you can find out more by listening to that video. And oh, by the way, I did want to say that Saturn is only going to 1 degree of Aquarius this year. And in May, it retrogrades. In July, it goes back into Capricorn. So it's going back into your third house come July. And then at the end of the year, it will go back into Aquarius and into 2021 and make more progress. But so you may be not fully dealing with fourth house matters as far as Saturn is concerned this year, but it gives you a little taste of it. On the 24th, we have a new moon at 4 degrees of Aries in the 6th house of health and work and things like that. So some new developments there, some new intentions that you can set that relate to what you want to achieve in this area of your health, of your, the type of work that you're doing. On the 30th, we have Mars going into Aquarius. And so so now we have Mars, we have Mars and Saturn, which are called malefics in Vedic astrology. I don't personally see any planet as bad, but they have their challenging parts to them for sure. This energizes you. You may be doing this energizes you in terms of your domestic situation. You may even decide to renovate your property. This can be some kind of conflict with the mother or conflict within the home about something. Perhaps related to issues that I spoke of earlier that have to do with rethinking something, maybe about having children or doing that. There may be some kind of misunderstandings or the thing is that Mercury is coming out of its shadow on this date. Okay, so so the misunderstandings part would have been earlier in the month. But because of those, whatever happened, if there's a communication breakdown, there might still be bad blood that needs to be kind of dealt with. But conflict, this could be just something very active where you're working from home and you're just very ambitious to do what you're doing. If you started a business, very active in that. So I think that as April, comes into being, that you will have, more of this 6th house activity, and therefore this more like efficient, business-like or work-oriented type of a vibe to you. Definitely in March, Scorpio, you, especially towards the beginning of the month, you have more of a pleasure-seeking nature, maybe doing a lot of fun things. And then you get down to work. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a chart interpretation, any other reading, a love reading, please check me out at rainamoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.